But the date doesn't really matter because the information is general and applies in 1750 and in 2050. So don't worry about the date. And if you're listening to this mastermind later, we can certainly see if we can provide a replay. And I might offer it at a later time. So today's mastermind, and a couple of words to who I am. I'm Professor Johanna Sophia, actually professor of film and educator, professor of education, Waldorf in particular, so a dual thing there. Nothing to do with nourishment, except that my purpose has always been to move toward a healthier, happier, more collaborative world. And today we're just talking about collaborating with our own body and with our own biology. And therefore, this mastermind is titled Self-Heal for Cheap, because healing our biology is not necessarily expensive. People do all sorts of really expensive stuff out there, but I'm not that person. So I'm the person who finds ways that are close to nature and close to simple, but yet sophisticated enough that they're delicious. So I'm very much into culture and creating delicious things, even for cheap. So we don't want to be boring or just live on rice and beans or, yeah, that's why we're humans. We have creativity and we make things beautiful and we make things delicious and we make things smelling good and feeling good and looking good. All of the above should also be applied to food production and self-healing. But self-healing is not only food. So we'll also in today's mastermind talk about the 5 modalities that we need to self-heal, and nourishment is only one of them. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Let me first talk a little bit about life on planet Earth. What do you need to talk about life on planet Earth? Hello, we all live on planet Earth with trees and animals and plants and everything, because I need to talk about how it actually works. And while we're all looking at it, like I'm looking out of my window, I see grass and trees, and I need see another building a little bit further down, and I see biology out there. Even in my house, I'm looking at an orchid plant. I'm looking at something that I'm showing you later that's sprouting here on my table. I'm looking at plants. I'm looking at my hands. All of it is, of course, biology. And all of it is, of course, alive because we haven't killed it yet. Actually, the irony of today's talk is that even in death, there is, of course, new life. There are the decomposers, etc. So let me start with everything on planet Earth is alive in a way. It reproduces itself. Even stones and dirt and sand are somewhat alive because they're still modified by what? By wind and water and chemicals in the air, and of course by human hands. So, but how does biology work? Biology works because it constantly reproduces itself all the time. It constantly reproduces itself. When it stops reproducing itself, it begins to die off. In fact, when all elements of life in our human body. Oh, here's my cat, my son's cat, actually, that wants to participate in the mastermind. So you will hear her talk a little bit, and I won't react to it necessarily. So of course, she's alive too, and she's reproducing herself all the time too. Why am I saying life reproduces itself all the time? What does life consist of? Yes, darling, you can't make a noise here and distract everybody. Because what is life made of? It is made out of tiny little entities we call cells. What do these cells do? They constantly reproduce if they're healthy cells, and the old ones, and they also throw out the old ones or decompose the old ones in what we call excrement or urine or exhale, which is another thing that gets me, of course, to something that we recently should have understood, but did not for the most part. All our reproduced cell tissue also has a life cycle. And that's another thing. What is life? Life is always in cycles, always in cycles. It germinates. There are our germs. It grows and it dies. And that's part, and then it provides fertilizer for the next growth. And it can be a different type of life, right? Our excrement typically does not lead to new growth of humans, but it creates life of plants and good soil, etc. If we were in a natural cycle, which I think we're going to understand soon and get back to. Not back to, get forward to, because we didn't really understand it, at least not in the Western culture, for hundreds of years, thousands probably. So life is constant reproduction. Now, who is reproducing life all the time? And here we get two tiny little entities, also called germs. Isn't that ironic? What are these kind of germs? They are fungi and bacteria and what we call viruses, which is debatable, and which are tiny little entities that help clean out the body. And they are also, what's the last group? It's a whole group of tiny little worms and critters, with some of which we call parasites, but they're actually part of that which I called in this morning's email that I sent out, the symphony of life, or the symphony of biology. So when all these little entities work together, then we get life. And when they're in tune, imagine a big symphony, right? When all the instruments are off key, we call that cacophony, noise. It hurts our ears. We go like, ah! And when they're in harmony, when they're in tune, and this one provides this sound, and that one provides that sound, and that one provides that sound, then we get a beautiful symphony of life. And that symphony of life is a question of balance. Things, all these little critters and elements have to be in good balance, have to be collaborating. Now, if we throw in killers that kill off one part of these, or majority of these little entities we call germs, or bacteria and fungi and viruses and parasites, little worms and all those kind of little critters that actually your very body is made of to the majority of cells. only some of those cells, 30 to 40%, there's debate. Some people say only 10 to 15% are actually human cells, particular to the human genetic makeup. So we have this, we are this, or our body is this entity of lots of little entities that collaborate. And when they're in symphony and making harmonic, beautiful sounds, then we have what we call health or wellness, right? When they are out of tune, or one is dominating and killing the others, and inflammation arises to try and bring balance back. Heat arises, fever, we call that fever, to try and put things back in balance. Then we call that state of being sick or illness. And we have thousands of definitions for this illness. And people always say, well, does your scenario, does your approach work for arthritis? Well, what about migraine? Well, what about diabetes? Well, what about cancer? Well, what about blah, 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 blah. Thousands of diagnoses. And yet, the definition that the symphony of life in our body is off kilter explains all of it. Of course, when we have an accident and we have an arm cut off and we need to put that back together, and it will grow back together because we have sophisticated surgery that enables that. We need that sophisticated surgery to get that arm back. I actually had a neighbor at when I lived in the Catskills who had been shot in the arm, hunting, as they do up in the mountains. And his arm was literally severed, and they sewed it back on so it was shorter, but it was somewhat functioning again. And of course, that's miraculous. Now, was it necessary to shoot around and shoot that poor Ben's arm off? That's questionable. So in any case, our body can manage even that. It grows back together. It finds a way to rebalance even that amputated arm that can be surgically put back on. So our body is a self-healing instrument. I'm sure you've heard that before. It heals itself. Its whole operation is, it's as if the instruments constantly tune themselves. Isn't that a beautiful example? You don't have to go and tune your strings and your various instruments, but you can leave that to your body if, and now we're getting to the 5 things that I announced we're going to talk about. If those 5 things are available to the body to rebalance all the way, to tune its instruments all the way, to get back into a healthy reproduction of new cell tissue so that we can be in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And we have people in here from, who is the youngest? Who is younger than 40 in here? Give me a text. And who's older than 70 in here? I already know. Shirley is. Nancy is. Yeah. And she just went running. So keeping this body in regenerative, reproductive mode all the time. Okay, so we women can't have babies anymore after that era ends, but we have to and can reproduce the new cell tissue all the time so that we can stay in a healthy mode. So, and of course, all of that we learn in my Super Happy Body course. that is a 12-month course, and we go and walk everybody through to their new mission. And we have one person in here who just is about to finish and do her thesis, her final paper. That's Linda Rouser. And she has to deliver her 20-page paper and presentation of her new business, being a health coach. So that's what we do in that class, but let's get to the 5 elements that are necessary for a healthy, regenerative body. So we started out with what is life? What creates life, we can also say. What creates life on planet Earth, you know, people always say, oh, it's because there is water. Oh, it's because there is sunshine. Oh, it's because there is air. Oh, it's because there is soil and life in the soil. Now, I happen to think neither the religious story nor the Darwinistic story. I happen to think that, if you will, we chose this planet to incarnate on, to have this experience on planet Earth, which is just phenomenal because we have senses that are nowhere else to be had, right? Other than in this body, we can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can smell, we can think, we can feel texture, we can project, we can love, we can, I mean, that's really the biggest thing, right? We can love, we can connect, we can, and what makes us humans, in my view, is we can create. And then people say, well, animals are also creative. Look at the beaver, etc. Mind you, I love all animals and I don't eat them. But the beaver cannot decide to next year build the beaver house on a tree. We can. Now, we do a lot of nonsense with our creative abilities. As I've said often, we do a lot of destructive creations because we got into an era of dominance and of hierarchies and of empires and of defining ourselves by what we own instead of by who we are. I think we're evolving to that new definition of who we are. But back to what are the 5 modalities we need to be regenerating ourselves in a healthy manner. Sweetheart, she wants to go out, and I know she knows that I'm typically running to open the door for her, but not right now. So those 5 things are the elements: fresh air, sunshine, good electromagnetic fields from the soil, because that's something, that's kind of the next level of understanding of what biology is. But I can't go too much into it today. So sunshine, air, soil, and of course, water. Now, all of those things, well, sunshine, you could argue, is not necessarily alive, but it allows everything on planet Earth to come alive. How do we do that? So modality number 1 is exposing ourselves to nature. And to me, that all comes together in breathing. Yes, baby. What am I supposed to do? Linda, are you going to take over for me so I can let her out? Linda's too shy. So there's water and there's air. And yes, we need water to be alive, but we can self-heal with exposing ourselves to all those elements. And breathing is something that we forget because we have to do it all the time, right? If we thought too much about it, we would probably be too self-conscious. We have to do it all the time to stay alive. And to put the oxygen deeply into your lungs without inhibition, without having things in front of our faces or having closed windows that are so tight that the indoor air is toxic. And I don't get how people don't understand that everything you do to inhibit your oxygen uptake is destructive to your healthy cell reproduction. Your entire body requires oxygen all the time. And of course, what is in the air? Is the air dead? Is the air not alive? What's in there? Trillions and trillions of, again, bacteria and little critter viruses and tiny little entities that are alive. If you sanitize the air and kill off everything in it, if you have a space, for example, for some computer work, that is required, take out the oxygen and the aliveness in the air, you cannot live. You have to then, get an oxygen tank or in order to keep you alive. You can, of course, live on an oxygen tank for a limited amount of time underwater, for example, right? Oh, here we go. There she is. All right, baby. I am not dealing with you on my desk right now. So there's another alive being that wants to be taken care of. So when we kill off the air, it also becomes unalive and non-supportive of our regeneration. So healthy air is absolutely important. When we walk under trees, of course, we don't just get the fresh exhale, so to speak, of the tree, but we also get the electromagnetic fields of trees and plants and soil around us. So number one of the 5 things is breathing. And of course, I teach the Wim Hof method, even though I'm not certified, so I shouldn't say that, but I love him and I know that he would approve what I do. So deep breathing, sunshine, good water. I get my water. I actually drive to get my water from a spring. It comes directly out of the rock and is highly mineralized because it comes directly out of the rock and tastes fantastic. So, and along with the breathing actually goes something else. A new colleague of mine with whom I'm collaborating just asked me this morning, why cold shower every morning? Why not first hot and then cold? And I said, well, we live in so much heat. We have heated apartments, we have heated cars in the Northern Hemisphere right now. And so we don't need to go into heat first. We can just jump into the cold water. But of course, our body also produces heat all the time, and cold water enhances that, again, that cell reproduction. It rushes our blood throughout the body. As does running outside, like Nancy and I just did before the mastermind. Okay, number 1, sunshine, breathing, water and air. Number 2 is nourishment. Mind you, these are not in hierarchical order. They're all equally important. Nourishment is vitamins, minerals, proteins, phytonutrients, and nourishment is also, of course, air and water. So I made this little drawing, and then I thought, oh, it's 5 parts. It's like the little human, head, arms, legs. And there are these 5 elements that are necessary to heal ourselves. So very briefly, what makes the best nourishment? When is food best nourishing our human body? I always used to say, well, ask anybody on the street, what do you think is the healthiest for humans to eat? And they'll say fruits and vegetables. And they'll think of fresh fruits, probably, but dead vegetables. Why am I saying dead vegetables? Because they think of cooked spinach and steamed broccoli or baked potatoes, etc. Because our culture has, of course, developed all these wonderful cuisines of cooked foods. Now, when you analyze this scientifically, then of course you realize that all life on planet Earth feeds on other live elements. The tree inhales and brings up living water from the soil with minerals and nutrients, gets living air. All animals eat. My dear friend, Dr. Clement always says, Brian Clement always says, there are 11 million species on the planet. Only one of them eats dead stuff. Who's that? Well, she does, because when we feed her that prepared stuff, then, of course, that's not what she would eat in nature. In nature, she would eat fresh, live other creatures. And some people will say, well, what about the hyena? Eats corpses, carcasses. But by the time the hyena eats them, there's what in the carcasses for the most part? Little decomposers and worms. And so none of that is sanitized and dead like it is sanitized when we pasteurize something. So just very quickly, the healthiest food we can possibly consume that helps our cell tissue to regenerate quickly is raw, fresh, definitely must be organic, because we don't want to put poisons back into the body that we're trying to clear out. Fruits, vegetables, seeds, and grains and legumes. I mean, they make all these differences between the different food groups, but it's basically plants. Why am I not including meat? Should we eat raw fish, raw meat? And then I always say, yeah, of course, if you want to, go run out and catch a rabbit, cut it with your teeth, suck out the blood, chew on those sinews and gnaw on those bones. And especially the intestines, you have to eat the intestines first with all the poop in it, because that's the healthy part for the predator. No, not appealing? Oh, how come? I don't understand. I thought you think you need to eat animals. That's strange. You don't like that? We have evolved to make animals taste like plants. Oh, okay, because we can't really digest them with all that poop and all that tough stuff. And of course, there are lots of reasons why, when you, again, look at the biology of this human body, it has the biology of what we call an herbivore. It has a long intestine. It doesn't have an esophagus that opens up to let large lumps of flesh go through, which is what carnivores have. From the big birds to the bear, they're very much omnivores, but they have an esophagus. That means a throat that opens up to swallow whole lumps of flesh and sinews and parts of bones and cartilage and all of that, right? And what's in the stomach to digest all of that? Hydrochloric acid. So that breaks everything down. Okay. Next, so let's just move on with, we're basically herbivores. And yes, can you survive meat? Of course you can, but it will shorten your life and it will shorten your health or impede your health, right? So Nancy and I know all about that, Linda too, and I'm sure a lot of you in here do as well. But check it out. Yes, darling, I need to read my paper. She sits, of course, on where I'm busy doing something. All right, so we need breathing, we need nourishment, we need movement. Why movement? Because all of life is movement. And if we don't allow our body to challenge the muscle tissue, we degenerate in the muscle tissue. And the heart is a muscle. And if you take my case, I have a little hole in my heart. And so I've always had issues that I'm not as strong as I'm supposed to be, not as good in sports, etc. So I had to make an extra effort to go running, to work out, etc., to get that heart muscle to function properly. And we can do that. So movement, also cheap if you do it by yourself or you sign up for somebody who does it online on YouTube or anywhere else so that you can follow a program or you create your own. Or you follow my programs. I have lots of fitness, over 50 programs and other such things where, and my Twitch channel has workouts so that you can just follow another workout and or go running, go on long walks, etc. So movement is number 3. Number 4 is rest. Rest is absolutely crucial, as we all know, because that's when a lot of the pushing out of the old stuff happens. The regeneration, in my understanding, works all the time, but pushing out the dead parts happens at night or whenever we sleep. And of course, rest is not just sleeping, it's also meditation or meditative work, deep relaxation. I do a whole workout on deep relaxation. And the allowing the biology to do its own thing and allowing the emotions to slow down and the mind to slow down so that everything can awaken the beauty in this self-regenerating biology. So, and the last, number 5 in my list is joy and ecstasy and happiness and gratitude and love. Love is, of course, in all of that. If we don't have that, the 4 other elements all may not do anything, may just not work. So when you don't have a way to be joyfully living, getting up in the morning and looking forward to the day. Of course, going out into nature, creating things with other human beings, getting together, that's when all the other elements decrease in efficacy in terms of helping you rejuvenate. So all of these are really cheap modalities, right? So I said, self-heal for cheap, except we have this idea that food is expensive when it's healthy. And I wanted to give you a few ideas as to how food can be inexpensive. And that is when we, she's on my pad and on my book. All right, darling, you can stay. Yes, you can stay. I've worked around you. what are some of the foods that we can make for ourselves and share with others that are both super delicious and very inexpensive? So food number one. Where are my sprouts? So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that works. Share. Why am I not seeing this thing back big? I want to see this big. Huh. Can you see the jar with the sprouted lentils and the mango? Oh, I can't. Yes?
Yes, we could see
Right.
it perfectly.
Beautiful. All right. I have two screens here, so I'm getting confused what you can actually see thereof. So do you see these beautiful lentil sprouts here, how they are totally green and sticking out the top of the jar? This whole jar, it's a gallon jar, so it's big, is actually created by putting, I think, 3 tablespoons of lentils in there. That's all it takes to create a whole gallon jar full of living plants. And they taste very much like peas, I find. Also, I just made mung bean sprouts, and they're also very much like, they taste like peas, but I also use them to mix them, of course, mix them into your salad, chop them up. When they're this big, lentil sprouts start to get tough. So you might want to chop them up so that they're not too chewy. But there are lots of other seeds that we can sprout and create beautiful, fresh plant life, even in an apartment, even etc. Even in the depth of winter, right? And we will have fresh plants that are inexpensive. They go into lots of different dishes too. For example, my beet burgers are now also made with sprouted lentils or sprouted mung beans. And these burgers are dehydrated in the dehydrator. So sprouting, and I put this mango here because I cut off the top and saw that it wasn't ripe enough. And I put it back on, and lo and behold, it literally grew back together. So that again verifies and validifies my story of the severed arm that grows back together, right? Nature does that everywhere. So this piece that you see here cut off literally grew back onto the mango, even though it was lying around in my house. But it's an organic mango, and that is very important because its entire life force has not been nuked or chemically altered or waxed, right? So that's why that works. So the mango is still alive, even though it has lived through being picked somewhere in Florida or Mexico or wherever it's coming from, has traveled and is now in a store, and then in my car, and then in my living room or kitchen, and lying there growing back together. It's miraculous. It's beautiful. And again, that's why it's so important to have living foods. And I teach that in my upcoming course, the Learn to Be More Self-Sustaining. I teach sprouting and fermenting and foraging and dehydrating and preparing things for freezing and preparing dehydrated goods so that you can always have stacks of food and be more self-sustaining. All right, so I also wanted to show you foraging. Of course, here's fresh dandelions from outside. These are real wild dandelions, not from the store, but foraging allows you to, and I mean, people even forage in Central Park, right, Nancy? Yeah. And hopefully the city doesn't spray there. But of course, in most nature parks, you're pretty safe to go and pick because things are not sprayed. Actually, I see here on the side, there's also this is probably a garlic mustard leaf. So yeah, there's lots of foraging that goes on. Our Learn to Be Self-Sustaining course starts on, again, I have to dig it out from under my dialing here. Starts on February 1st. So that's in a few days. And the cost of that is only $497 for a 2-month course with all of these different elements that we're learning. And I'll send you all the links so you can decide what to participate in if you want to. Then there is, dehydrating. And do we have, no, that's a smoothie. One is a savory smoothie. I call it gazpacho smoothie. Again, we can make this with foraged greens and then add cucumber, zucchini, and things from the store that you might like, or a little avocado, etc. And we get a beautiful gazpacho, a savory, a salty, garlicky, if you like that smoothie, and a sweet smoothie. So when we do our smoothie cleanses, the next one I think is coming up on February 16th. It's a 7-day smoothie cleanse. We will start out making 2 smoothies, and these are both gallon containers. So you have, not quite, I think they're more like 3/4 gallons. You will have a sweet smoothie and a savory smoothie. And the sweet one is all purple because there are blueberries in there, obviously. Blueberries come in fresh and in frozen, and organic frozen blueberries are actually quite good in content. And sometimes we can find them really inexpensively. Talking about cheap again, I get my frozen blueberries from Aldi's, which has good organic stuff, believe it, and the price is right, so you can afford to have your blueberries. And they're just not all pretty perfect, but who needs pretty perfect? The nutrients are there. All right. Then, yeah. And then we have, these are the more luxurious foods. This is on my website. You can go and find the free, it's still free, book, Rawsome Chocolates. And there are 21 recipes, I think, of desserts, and actually also a couple of savory things that include raw cacao. So they're chocolate goodies. This is an orange chocolate cake, and this is my Oreo mousse, and ginger brownies are an old product of mine. So good. We have talked about the 5 elements, and we have talked about the biology of life and regeneration. Let me stop the sharing. I need to mention this quickly. The big life-changing program, that's the 12-month program. And today only, or as you watch this mastermind, today only, you can get into that program for only $200 per month. I still have it here for $3,000 or $297 a month. Yeah, it's always cheaper if you can afford to pay up front. But today is $200 only. All right, I want to go to, do you have any questions? And I'm going to stop sharing. and putting us back on here. All right. Are there any questions? Some people, I don't know, TJ and Audrey. Would you like to ask any questions regarding what we were talking about? So, yeah, because I can talk forever if you don't have any questions.
Wondering, like, if you, I actually thought this might be more about like homeopathy. Do you think about those kinds of alternative naturopathy, homeopathy, herbs? For me, it's like I don't really see doctors at all.
Yeah.
I don't really have a need. And also, I know they only take 4 hours of nutrition class.
Yeah.
And I've studied this for 50 years, so I think I know a little bit more than they might.
Yeah.
But for me, it's
Yeah,
dentistry.
let me answer that question. For me, I grew up with homeopathy because I grew up in a Waldorf household, in an anthroposophist household, where homeopathy was the only thing we used. I've never been vaccinated. I've never had allopathic medicines really, until of course I went through my growing years as a young woman and had to try out some stuff. But my answer to homeopathy, when people who are on poor diets ask me, well, what about homeopathy? I always say no herb, no drop. No, and homeopathy, of course, is not really the herbal essence, it's the energetic essence in the respective plant life that it's derived from. But none of that can override a burger or a steak when it's made out of meat. None of it can override or fix something that you have created, or a donut for that matter from Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not picking on anybody in particular here, but none of medicines that are herbal and natural, I think they can enhance when we are already on a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. But the healthy lifestyle is what the biology needs first in order to then also be further enhanced and pushed toward wellness with those particular medicines. I mean, like I said, we grew up with homeopathy, but I had always ear infections, and then sinus infections, and throat, and laryngitis, and all these infectious diseases. Why? Because we ate a lot of dairy, because my parents thought that was really, really healthy. So, and as soon as I cut out dairy, I've never had an ear infection again. I even can say that when my kids were young and I was hired as a teacher in a Waldorf school, and I was also having a corporate job, and I was doing this double job and the kids and everything. And they were always offering pizza at the school. So I thought, come on, I'm so healthy, I can handle it. Boom, the biggest ear infection I've ever had. So for me, cheese cannot be overridden by any homeopathy. It just can't. It's too powerful, a distractive or a destructive even element in the human body. So that's my answer to that. Those are wonderful modalities in addition to a healthy lifestyle. But they cannot fix an unhealthy lifestyle if the unhealthy lifestyle continues. That's my experience and point of view. So, and I know in your case, Nancy, you've been a vegan for how long?
Only 50 years.
I love that. Yes. And do you eat mostly organic?
Only organic.
There you go.
And mostly raw.
There
Almost
you
all
go.
raw.
That's why you're still running.
Yeah, but I'm very so athletic, you know, basketball, everything, all like, yeah. And I sometimes, you know, go flying and falling and everything. My chin-up bar fell out of the holder and dropped me on my knees because my feet were up. So, you know, I break bones occasionally and stuff like that. Because I am so active. And I found that the homeopathic, like arnica and, you know, hypericum and stuff like that, it heals it so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, they say bones break and you need 8 weeks. Like for me, it takes like 5 days or something like that, and I'm back on my feet. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to offer that if you are plant-based, vegan, organic, raw, holistic, etc. And I do a no salt oil, no SOS, salt, oil, and
Mm-hmm.
sugar. Add to that, you know. But for me, it's been my teeth, and I want to kind of like just keep them really healthy and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, kudos to you. It's so good. Oh, of course, my father actually showed us the arnica plants. We always had arnica oil and so forth for rubbing on, not for eating. And my father showed us the arnica plants in the Alps. We went mountain climbing with him, and so I'm very familiar with a lot of the elements. And yeah, they absolutely help. But so does ginger and garlic and cayenne pepper. You know, when I twisted my foot really badly, instead of going to the hospital or anything, and it was like a big blue purple thing, my foot, I just put piles of ginger with cayenne, and I didn't use garlic, ginger and cayenne, but I eat a lot of garlic, in a poultice, not directly on the skin, but in a cloth, folded up on my foot repeatedly. And it just, like you said, it just takes days to heal with the right medicines that are from nature. And I mean, we can talk more about difficult situations that might be where we might think they're difficult to heal, such as I was just looking up spider bites because one of my clients had a spider bite before she was my client and ended up with systemic inflammation, which is very dangerous. It can be deadly in a hospital, and they did all sorts of things to get her out of this inflammation. And I was thinking, you know, a ginger poultice and going on to high green, cruciferous green smoothies with a little bit of flax and kind of the protocol of Dr. Goldner would have done the trick, would have fixed that. And I have another spider story. My colleague, Fully Raw Christina, she goes by Fully Raw Christina, had a black spider bite in the jungle somewhere, and just decided, okay, I'm only going to eat watermelon. And for 2 weeks, she ate nothing but natural watermelon with seeds. And she had an indigenous person put poultices of, I think in that case, it was like a basil and garlic mix onto that bite. And it healed perfectly fine. And she had no traces of the spider poisons, which is supposed to last for a long time in your body, no trace left. So, so yeah, it's interesting that we can, even in those very difficult situations, that we can self-heal. And so self-heal for cheap is also that you don't need to run to the emergency room if you know some of these modalities and you trust your ability to self-heal and you trust your body's ability, which of course is the the last part, the joyful, gratitude rich. Hi, David. I don't know you, but I'm happy to see another face because so many people just stay anonymous. Yeah, it just makes such a difference that when we know some of those modalities, we literally do not need to go to doctors. I haven't been to doctors in 20 years either. Yeah, sometimes there are situations. No, even, I got into a car accident now 3 years back, and I was T-boned, and everybody wanted me to go check up, and the insurance wouldn't pay unless you go check up. So finally I had them, I had a checkup, and there was nothing. I literally crawled feet first out of the totaled car, and there was nothing in my body. I needed a few days of rest to calm down from the shock, but I didn't even have broken bones. So, of course, that's not to say that that's always the case. However, we are more likely to survive, self-heal, and rebalance. Again, back to what I said in the very beginning, that balance of the symphony of life comes back together when we have the right nutrients, the right breathing, the right air and water and sunshine, and the right mindset. And I'm tired of the word mindset, as if it fixes everything and it makes you rich in 2 days and so forth. So I'm like, I don't really like the word mindset anymore that much, but it still means that when you are aware of your own healing power, you can, together with the biology, you can fix everything faster and everything more happily, if that makes sense, more joyfully. But many aches and pains also go away just with the deep breathing method. And of course, Wim Hof has helped thousands of people, millions of people now around the globe to get to that point where they are confident that just with the deep breathing method and the cold water exposure, the body begins that biological self-fixing. So, yeah, any more questions? Everybody is happy with everything I said. Nobody has, come on, give me some counter here. Give me some, yeah, but I want to talk about, I want to hear some.
I thought this would be an hour and I have to leave soon.
Yeah, of course. And it was supposed to be an hour, but we do go overboard sometimes. Andrea, do you want to contribute?
I just want to say what but could there possibly be? These are like just the fundamental principles of life. Air, fresh air, healthy, circulating, beautiful air, sunshine, movement, joy, luscious nourishment that the great goddess mother provides for us right there. What we should be doing is permaculturing the entire public sphere.
Of course, yes.
All that natural food. So bravo for you for putting together a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, of course, I want you all to implement. And many of us need a helping hand. I certainly do. Again and again, go to other people I just actually appointed a colleague of mine to call me every day to keep me on track with a particular goal that I want to set I have set before the end of the month. So if you need somebody to help you through particular phases, for example, the smoothie cleanse or the what's coming up? Oh, a virtual retreat is coming up. That's only $47 and you can sign up for it. Where can you sign up for it? Oh, I think I created a link. Yeah. So you need to let me know that you want to sign up for it. It's on the 27, 28, 29. And even though my clients are in there, it's open to the public, and you can, for 3 days, intensively get into some more of this work that leads to this great health that so many of us in here are actually experiencing in the second half of life, or the third part of life, right? And that third part of life can be the best ever. You know why? Because if your body is fully functioning and your mind is happy, you have all this experience of decades of life that you can put to work in this part of life. And it's incredibly rewarding when you figure out that you're not the old wood, delegated to the rocking chair, or to worse, the nursery home, and fed with drugs and crap food. But you are actually a viable, incredibly valuable resource and contribution to society. So that's why it's important to self-heal for cheap, because we need all of the minds, hearts, and souls that are ready to provide their experience to the world and others in these coming decades. Very, very important, because there will be more chaos. There will be more, especially financial chaos over the next so many years. It's to be expected. So creating new systems will largely rely upon us old folks, because we have experienced the damage that the old system did. And we have created, many of us, new ways of being, and new ways of being healthy is just part of new ways of being and being creative. So let's end here. If there are no more questions.
Joanna?
Yes, Shirley.
Yes. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration. Everyone needs a renewal constantly, whereas they age. They
Yes.
need
Shirley, will you
reinforcement,
share how old you are?
like almost I've never told anybody, late 80s.
Late 80s. That
Yes.
is beautiful. And Shirley, I know Shirley has been a plant-based high raw person for decades as well, and is
Yes. I was taking care of my husband for like 4 straight years around the clock. Lack of sleep, very stressful. He was an attorney, addicted to stress, but I kept him living till
yeah.
90. He just passed away, and it's been very challenging. So I aged like that because of lack of sleep. And
Well,
I-
but now you're going to perk yourself back up to give us another few more years of your presence on planet Earth.
that's right. I had a
Okay.
question for you.
That's a great last word. We want to close out so people don't feel I'm stretching this out forever. But I love you guys, and I'm going to email every one of you the offerings that I'm making here, and that $200 offer for the next Super Happy Body class, as long as people are coming from this mastermind. That's going to be the offer. It starts on February 7th. So we have a short time to get that done. Ciao, everybody. Mwah. So cool to have so many fabulous people in here. Ed Wadinsky, you should be visible too. I've known you for a long time. You're struggling with finding the right path to self-healing. Get with the program. Ciao.